Hi, and thanks for stopping by. I'm Larry Weinstein, and I'm both a CPA and the founder of Solve My Tax Problems, based in Houston, Texas. And today I wanted to answer the question, are appeals officers easier to deal with and easier to work with than a revenue officer? First off, an appeals officer is typically somebody that you deal with when you have filed for a CDP or collection due process hearing. An appeals officer is the one that you will work with once your case is assigned for your CDP hearing. And to answer the question, is an appeals officer easier to work with than a revenue officer? It really just depends. I guess it depends upon how you define how difficult working with the revenue officer is versus working with an appeals officer. But I can state, generally speaking, that I have found that an appeals officer is actually easier to work with than a revenue officer. Understanding that both an appeals officer and a revenue officer, they're following the rules and regulations set forth by the IRS in their Enforced Collection Division. But it's been my experience that an appeals officer takes more of a 30,000-foot view. They look at the whole case. They want to see, has the IRS followed their own rules and procedures? Has the revenue officer followed the rules and done what they were supposed to do? But more importantly, an appeals officer typically has a strong collection background, being a revenue officer. And what I have found to be the case is that most appeals officers, they look at the big picture and they are going to try to work with you to the extent that they possibly can to come to some type of equitable solution, something that's fair to you, the taxpayer, and something that's fair to the IRS. So their job is to not necessarily kick out your case and not come up with a solution. Their job is really to see, following the IRS rules and procedures, is there a way that we can come to an acceptable solution that's fair to the taxpayer, fair to the IRS? So to answer the question, is it easier to work with an appeals officer or a revenue officer, really just depends. But on balance, I have found it just a bit easier to work with an appeals officer because their job is to come up with some kind of solution and they want to have the case settled. That's it for today's video where I answered the question, which one is easier to work with, an appeals officer or a revenue officer? Hey, thanks for stopping by. Looking forward to seeing you real soon.